Hello, and welcome to Made from Humans, How Reality Becomes TV. I'm your host, Andy Dennert, the creator of Reality Blurred, and a writer who believes in the power of true stories. Every week I'll take you behind the scenes of reality TV and my writing about it. On this week's episode, 26 years ago, just 1 week and a few days after Survivor premiered, I was live on TV, competing for an audience's vote, and that was broadcast thanks to C-SPAN. Here's that wild and weird story. Plus, a couple hilarious recommendations for you, and stick around to the end for some hilarious life advice from Tiffany Pollard. Welcome back. So good to be here with you today. I'm thrilled that you're joining me on this behind the scenes of reality TV journey that we do here on Made from Humans. Over the past few weeks, I've been telling you updates about our listeners and friends in Australia and trying to get the territories of Victoria and New South Wales to compete. And I know so little about them, I just called them both territories. So clearly I should do some more research before I attempt to persuade them further. So instead, let's turn to the United States and get some competition going here. Because of the people listening in the United States, which is by far the majority of our audience, which makes sense, I write about and talk mostly about American reality TV shows. The top listening area is New York City, followed closely by Detroit, and then followed by the Orlando, Daytona Beach, Melbourne metro area. That's where I'm located, so perhaps it's my friends all downloading the episode. I actually don't download my own episode, so it can't be me. But Orlando is in third place. Or maybe there's just a lot of great reality TV fans right here in Central Florida. After Orlando, Los Angeles, then Chicago coming in fifth place. And Chicago, of course, the birthplace of Reality Blurred, where I was living when I founded it. And just to round out the top 10, we have Seattle, Boston, Atlanta, Philadelphia, and then Washington, D.C. So if you are in any of those cities and you would like to try to move up that leaderboard next week, tell some friends about Made from Humans, hit that little share button on your podcast app right now, and share the wonderful content which is coming your way right now. First up today, as we do usually this season 5, is Curtain Pull, in which I take a quick peek behind the scenes of a show. Today, it's actually more like the industry and the reality TV world. I was just at the ATX TV Festival in Austin, which was fantastic. It was my first time there, though I've seen it from afar, watched things on YouTube, watched its panel sessions, read reporting from my TV critic colleagues who've been there or talked to those who were moderators on panels. The Television Critics Association did a panel that I moderated this year, which was terrific and fun. And I went to a panel that I will be writing more about with Boston Rob and a executive from NBC Universal who is in charge of casting for NBC, Peacock, and all of their cable networks, basically. So Bravo. One interesting thing I learned from that was just about sort of Boston Rob making the move from CBS to the NBC Universal family. So he's now kind of in that ecosystem. But what I thought I would share here is just something that they mentioned that people might not be too aware of and is kind of loosening in recent years. And that is that when you go on a reality TV show or when someone signs up for a show, one of the things in the contract is an agreement to not appear on other reality TV shows within a certain amount of time without permission. It's usually a year. And again, the permission part is kind of key. So they were actually talking, the executive was talking about how they, for example, let Maura from The Traitors go on Dancing with the Stars because that's been her dream. So they were glad to, not enforce that part of her contract. But it does mean that she basically has to ask permission. And so do other people on reality TV shows. So it's kind of like the studio system. You're being moved into a relationship with this giant company just by appearing on Survivor or The Traitors or whatever the show might be. Again, some flexibility, and I think things are changing in terms of networks letting other people from other networks, other shows be on their shows and seeing that as a strength rather than as a weakness. But ultimately, it's still a contractual thing and you're locked in. So Next time you see someone jumping between corporate families or shows, just know that there's been probably a lot of negotiation or discussion behind the scenes. Okay, on to story time, where I tell a story from my past, and today it's when I competed live on TV and lost, becoming America's second greatest thinker. At least in that moment, and at least in my mind, or in the minds of my friends who made fun of me with that title for years. I was 22 years old. It was the spring of 2000. Survivor hadn't premiered, Big Brother hadn't premiered, Making the Band was on the air, I hadn't started Reality Blurred. I came across an essay contest asking the question, is democracy fair? And having recently graduated from college and being convinced that I knew all of the things about politics at that point, I entered and said, no, it's not fair. I would definitely take that position today, though reading my essay back today, definitely don't even know really what I was arguing. I kind of discussed capitalism a lot and consumerism and tried to make a case for how democracy is being treated that way. There's definitely a core line of thinking there that I think I share today about the fact that the system is fundamentally unjust and there's not a lot of, equal playing field and an equal starting point for everyone, even though that's the idea is that like everyone has the one vote and everyone has the same access to information. And that's just, of course, not true. That may be theoretically true, but in reality, the way people's lived existences are, there are all kinds of barriers, some created, some systemic, some that are just this, have been part of the system since it was created, and others that, politicians find new ways to prevent people from being part of democracy just to keep their jobs and to keep their power, which wasn't a new thing then and is still happening today. Anyway, I wrote this essay, sent it off. I will say I shared a draft with a friend who was basically like, Andy, you have no idea what you're talking about here. You should be discussing political parties in this part, and you clearly don't have an understanding of them, and you have no understanding of political theory, and all of that is accurate. I'm sure I responded defensively in that time and or made no changes as a result, but he was exactly right. So I appreciate the note 26 years later. At some point after I sent that off on April 3rd, 2000, I received a call that I'd been selected as one of the two finalists who were arguing no, democracy is not fair. And in early June, on a Friday after 2 episodes of Survivor Borneo had aired, I was on a plane to Minneapolis, and then I was in a rental car driving through the dark for 3 hours, arriving in a small town of 972 people called New York Mills, Minnesota. I think I actually flew from Albany, New York, because I was in grad school at Bennington at the time. So I went from actual New York and ended up in New York Mills, Minnesota. The 972 people in the town were not visible when I arrived. There were literally 0 of them, even at the motel where a room had been booked for me. I went in, there was a key on the desk for me, maybe in an envelope, and I just checked myself into my room where someone had left me a lovely gift basket and welcome. The next morning, I drove over to the New York Mills Regional Cultural Center, and they are the sponsor of the essay contest I entered, which is called the Great American Think-Off. It's basically a philosophy contest where people enter with their writing and their words and then come and actually debate those ideas, or at least 2 people from either side debate. That was started in 1993 with the question, is humankind inherently good or inherently evil? They went on in 1994 to ask, does life have meaning? And then in 2000, of course, was the question, is democracy fair? The Cultural Center, by the way, was a really cool space and building and just idea too. The idea that it was, and like I'm looking at their website right now and their logo says cultivating the arts, and their logo is still a little person on a tractor next to the words Cultural Center. It was that way when I went there 26 years ago. They were founded in 1990, and I'll quote from their website here, as a multidisciplinary arts organization dedicated to expanding cultural and creative opportunities for rural Americans. Just a really cool space, cool group, and a really amazing program to think about the idea of bringing people from all across the country to your small town to have a debate. And this debate occurred live on television. And that's thanks to C-SPAN. That's actually why I'm remembering this today. And as I record, it's June 2nd, 2026. And today is the 40th anniversary of C-SPAN starting to cover the United States Senate. If you don't know C-SPAN, it's basically a series of cable channels and now streaming and apps that cover gavel to gavel what happens in the United States Congress, in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate. So they stream it live. Basically, this is before the Big Brother live feeds. We had C-SPAN live feeds from the floor of the House of Representatives and the Senate. C-SPAN sent out a press release about this 40th anniversary of their Senate coverage, and which is on C-SPAN 2, that channel, and said that as of now, early June, they've had 43,830 hours of Senate sessions that are recorded and archived and available to people to look at, watch, use. That includes 169,000 speeches and 23,493 roll call votes. So those are your fun facts for today. Memorize them. There will be a pop quiz next week. Also, just fun fact about C-SPAN is that it's privately funded. This is not the government putting cameras in the House and Senate. The cameras are actually controlled by the chambers, not C-SPAN, something I'll mention in a moment in our recommendation section. But C-SPAN itself is funded by cable companies and now satellite and streaming companies as well as a public service. So no taxpayer dollars go toward these broadcasts or this archive that they have created. And it started in 1979, giving this gavel-to-gavel coverage of the U.S. House chamber. No commercials, nothing, just that. And when C-SPAN doesn't have American government to cover, they have other programming, very famously a series of interviews with authors. There's a really famous call-in show that I'll talk about in this next section in a moment. And they also broadcast the Great American Think-Off the year I participated and the 2 years prior. They stopped after 2000. I don't know why. I will pretend it has nothing to do with me. It's not like I started screaming obscenities or something. However, that might have been a good idea because looking back on this, when I arrived at this high school auditorium it looked like a high school auditorium. It was actually the athletic center, but so we go in and it basically were like on what looked like my high school's gym floor under the basketball hoops. There were folding chairs set out for everyone who had tickets to the event and people from the community. A little makeshift stage with backdrop, American flag there, and we showed up and had our debate live in front of this audience and live in front of the C-SPAN audience. The debate was 3 parts, the no's and yeses, so 2 people on the same side debating, 2 people on the same side debating, and then the winner of each one debating for the big prize. I think we actually all got the same amount of money, which was nice, and there wasn't even like a British Bake Off plate, but there was someone declared America's greatest thinker. And as I said, sorry, spoiler alert, it was not me. That's because I lost the viewer vote on TV, and I lost the vote of the people sitting in the audience in front of me. I honestly think just watching parts of it back, I've never fully watched this 3 hours and 25 minutes or whatever it is. I don't know if I have the attention span for that. I don't know if I have the ability to watch myself at 22 years old trying to make arguments, and because I just want to say different things. If I listened to the questions, I'd be like, oh my gosh, why did you answer that? Why not this? Of course, at the time, I want to say I was a different person. That's not true. I was just at a different stage in my life. So I had different levels of knowledge and a different level of comfortability with myself. I think I look kind of awkward and stiff when I watch this back. Maybe that's just me judging myself. Perhaps that isn't the way it appeared to people at the time. But I also know that it's not like I stood up there and was like, is democracy fair? No. I can't get married in this country. So I don't even have access to the same, institutions that other people do. How are you possibly going to say that this system is fair? Never mind all of the other layers of systemic injustice, inequity, and all of the active attempts to thwart basically equality. Look what's happening in 2026 with all this gerrymandering. I think that's like the one thing I learned in high school government was that gerrymandering was illegal and wrong and not okay. And here we go, Republicans redrawing all the maps so they can win where they couldn't win otherwise, or so they can try to control things more because they know that all their ideas are actually deeply unpopular and people don't like them, so they have to cheat their way in. I should have talked with this kind of passion on C-SPAN. I did not. And when I say on C-SPAN, I mean actually also on C-SPAN talking to C-SPAN viewers, because after my opponent and I debated while they were counting the votes of the people who were there in the audience, we went over, sat down in chairs, put those little earbuds, IFBs, I think they're called, yes, in our ears, and took questions from a host and callers. All of that is part of this recording, thanks to C-SPAN and its archive. I was perhaps a little more animated in that section, but just watching, again, I kind of looked at some clips for this, and yeah, one of the answers I gave was, and I'll quote myself here, "What about the people who have a lot more important things going on in their lives than thinking about these things?" Just like, wow, my vocabulary was expensive. Nice work, Andy. I don't know, maybe I should give myself credit as a 22-year-old for doing well, for even showing up and doing it. The thing was, like, until we sat down for those questions from C-SPAN viewers, it was very abstract, the idea that we were on television. This wasn't a television studio, so it's not like American Idol where you go in and everything is built for cameras for broadcast. And the cameras were kind of out of the way. They were in the back and on the sides. During the downtime, they were still filming, and I definitely had no awareness of this, because there's one moment when you can see me kind of like turn and lean back to talk to someone in the audience as I'm sitting there with my fellow participants, the four of us who were on stage arguing these points. And I had no idea that that was being filmed and being broadcast to the world. I also had no idea that anyone would be watching live. I certainly didn't think it would be recorded and put on the internet for all time. But, you know, this media appearance still remains to this day the most, I was going to say the most popular. That's wrong. It's the thing that people mention to me the most after it happened, as in, I saw you on TV. So, you know, I've gone on cable news shows. I've been on a talking head on things like Vice's episode of Survivor and its reality TV documentary series. People have mentioned that occasionally or watched, including people I, you know, told about it. And I certainly told my family and friends and coworkers, so they all knew and that they were watching. But I got email messages from people I went to high school with, people I went to college with, family members I hadn't heard from in a while, all of whom just randomly stumbled across me on C-SPAN on a Saturday night. My only explanation here is that this was very early 2000s behavior of channel surfing, flipping through the channels one at a time, hitting that channel up or down button, looking for something, and just flip right past C-SPAN and, oh, that person looks familiar, let me stop, and oh my gosh, I actually know him. That's the only theory I came up with. Interestingly, C-SPAN had a viewer vote from its viewing audience during the Think Off for all three stages of the debate. This is probably because this is 2000 internet access time. But when I had the first debate arguing the no side, viewers voted, and I won that 60 votes to 37. So that means 97 people voted. I don't, you know, again, if people were on their phones today, that would probably be a very different kind of thing. But I think just people didn't have their computers in front of their TVs. And I know the only person I knew who actually voted was a coworker of mine who was like the CTO of the company I worked for in Chicago, and mentioned, you know, going in and kind of looking at the technology that they were using for voting and seeing if they could vote twice for me, which was very kind. After the first round of the debate, I won that viewer vote, and the audience in the crowd voted me the winner between the two people arguing no. And so they sent me to the final stage, which was very, very exciting. And then I went up against someone who I think actually won the Think Off a few years earlier, or was participating in the Think Off. He definitely had experience. He was a much better debater, much smoother, much more in command of himself and the stage and his ideas. So I understand why he won. Also, here was me, a 22-year-old, saying, hey, democracy isn't fair, but those of you in this audience, would you please democratically vote for me to win? I wish I'd thought of that line back then. I didn't really talk about myself, my story. And I don't just mean like I didn't like come out and start waving a pride flag and being like, I'm gay and I don't have all the rights that this straight man next to me does. And so how could we possibly talk about the system as being fair? I just don't think I really had a sense of what was a great approach or strategy. When the C-SPAN viewers voted between us, they voted 83 for him. Oh, no, sorry, 83 for me and 105 for him. So that's 44% to me, 55% him. And the people right there in the audience on the gym floor also voted for him and he won. So to tie all this back to reality TV, other than the filming and weird celebrity of it all, it's funny because this is a few years before American Idol, a few years before the idea of people watching a TV show and voting for someone. And it's so interesting to me that it didn't seem revolutionary. Even as someone who was watching Survivor and had watched The Real World and Road Rules, it wasn't like I thought like, oh, this should be, more. We should turn this into a series. Like that didn't occur to me at the time. And of course, American Idol came around, the idea of like viewers voting for the person that they want to win, that they think is the best singer, or of course, and we all know this to be the case now, never necessarily for the best singer, but the person that they like the best. So often the best singer is lost to the person with the most personality, or just maybe I say that because I'm bitter about some of the people who won over the years. Since then, we've actually seen a shift in reality TV, and largely this is budgetary, but a lot of shows now just let the audience vote, and then that's how they determine who's moving on. And by audience, I mean studio audience. So The Masked Singer is a good example. That's entirely decided by the people who are right there in the audience, and then they're escorted out before the masks are taken off. So they vote for their favorite singer and don't ever know who the celebrity is until the show actually airs. American Idol still does voting, although this season they've switched to like a really bizarre system of social media comments under certain posts, and that created delays. So they actually had to delay the announcement of an elimination for an entire episode because they didn't have information and ready. So it's interesting that they are still struggling with this in 2026, or I guess maybe trying to adapt to 2026 or just trying to get people to engage on platforms and convince the algorithms that they're popular. That's perhaps it. The Great American Think-Off continues to this day. It's actually coming up when June 13th, Saturday. The question for 2026, has the pursuit of happiness made Americans unhappy? And it will be taking place at 7 p.m. at the New York Mills School Auditorium on Saturday, June 13th. And you can get tickets and meet the finalists on their website, which I will link to if you want to see who will become America's greatest thinker this year, or in my case, America's second greatest thinker. C-SPAN, unfortunately, no longer covers it, but several of them have ended up on YouTube. I'm not sure if they stream them all or record it and put it on later, but I'm glad that they're still doing that. And I'm glad that C-SPAN is around to let us see what happens in real time and give us those live feeds of our government so we can at least work toward having a fairer democracy, if that is even possible. Okay, on to recommendations where I share things that are bringing joy and entertainment into my life. First up today is a C-SPAN related recommendation, but one that is so funny every time I watch it, I lose the ability to breathe for a few seconds because I'm laughing so hard. The footage that C-SPAN broadcasts from the United States Capitol, from the Senate chamber and the House of Representatives, is not controlled by them, or at least the angles and cameras are not controlled by them. It's controlled by whoever is in power at the time, like the party that's in control of the Senate or the House. That changed in January 2023 when the House wasn't in session and trying to elect a speaker. You might remember all that speaker drama. And as a result, C-SPAN's cameras were allowed to roam the floor and get angles that they never usually get, and also just show us people talking. It was fascinating footage. And some really amazing people turned that into what they call bad lip reading, where they basically dub over the footage and add really convincing dialogue on top of it. It is absolutely ridiculous and hilarious. And the best part, and I think the part that went the most viral on like TikTok and maybe Instagram and stuff, was the roll call where I think that's the clerk stands up there and is calling each member one at a time. And so they're showing her, then showing the member stand up and voting, and then sitting down. And so they basically added commentary from the clerk in addition to making the things that the people said absolutely ridiculous. My favorite is Nancy Pelosi. I will link to that separately so you can just watch that if you watch nothing else, because it's something about the way she just looks when she speaks that they've paired it with some dialogue that, again, I can't talk about it without laughing. So I'm going to stop. Anyway, check out Bad Lip Reading from Congress. That link is in the show notes or the episode description of your podcast app. Next up, House of Villains on Peacock. Its season has concluded recently, but I highly recommend going to watch it if you haven't already. This is not a show that's about strategy. It's a show that is about comedy and ridiculousness and hilariousness. And that's why I'm putting it here and pairing it with this ridiculous footage from the Bad Lip Readings, because it will make you laugh if you need that in your day. So there is a competition element. There is some real personality clashes, but also some really fun personality pairings too. But mostly people leaning into their quote unquote villainy as characters and just having fun with it. So if you haven't seen the season or the past seasons, definitely give House of Villains a look, because I'm pretty sure it'll give you a laugh or three. Okay, that's everything for today. Thank you so much for listening. Send me your feedback, questions, and thoughts. And if you're in a 5-star mood, please tap those right now in your podcast app of choice. Your ratings and reviews really do help me out. You can pause. I'll sit here and wait for you until you unpause just to go rate and review. So thank you. Thanks, you're back. I appreciate that. Our theme song is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod, and this episode is by me, Andy Dennert, and is copyright 2026 by Reality Blurred LLC, which is also me. You can find me at realityblurred.com and andydennert.com. I'll leave you today with life advice from reality TV, this time from Tiffany Pollard on House of Villains. I chose this for its loose connection to the main topic of democracy and voting, because here she's talking to the other players about whether or not they should vote for her, and I think just throwing out a fun little piece of advice at the same time.
And I deserve my spot here in the House of Villains. So I need y'all to keep me here. I don't want a sympathy vote. I don't need a sympathy vote. But I need y'all to understand the pecking order.